And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
Not socialism.
All right, let's not panic.
And it's gone.
I'll make the money back by selling one of my livers. I can get by with one.
Government should be a partner. Partner.
I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich.
And it's gone. Gone.
Hey, welcome to episode 1 of season 2 of the Global Crypto Podcast. And of course, this episode proudly sponsored by Paxful. Huge thanks to Paxful, the P2P marketplace for Bitcoin transactions around the world. With us in season 2's premiere is none other than host of the Keiser Report. Ladies and gentlemen, he doesn't need much of an introduction at all. Please welcome Max Keiser.
Great to be with you.
Max, there's been a lot of talk lately around your strong thoughts around Bitcoin over everything else being a shitcoin. Why don't you, let's start there. Let's delve into why that's causing so much commentary on Twitter, do you think?
I think go into the history of this a little bit to give you an idea what I'm talking about. So starting in 2012, 13, and 14, you had the first wave of altcoins. And a lot of those were done in fun, and a lot of those were done as experimentation. Starting around 2016, 17, and 18, became clear that Bitcoin was going to run away with it. The market cap got over 100 billion. And of course, it said 200 billion plus. So it kind of achieved escape velocity in terms of its dominance in the marketplace. And the altcoins started to really fade away in terms of market cap and also in terms of hash power. So Bitcoin right now has got over 85% of the all hash power of all coins, and that's rising, keeps going higher. And the fact is that none of these altcoins offer anything that Bitcoin doesn't either currently offer or can offer in the near term. So there's no real point to them. And the big reason, though, is that Bitcoin's energy needs are going to continue to increase at an almost exponential rate. So right now, the hash rate's at 150 quintillion calculations per second or so, and that's going to keep going up. And that requires a lot of energy. And that energy is coming from these other coins and hard forks where folks aren't going to bother mining these coins or hashing these coins or maintaining these coins because they would prefer to deploy energy into Bitcoin, the fastest horse in the race, the coin that's getting the corporate interest, like we saw at MicroStrategy, the coin that is getting huge buyer interest across the board from the folks over at Grayscale and others who are buying tens of thousands of coins on a regular basis. So it's just a matter of it's a winner-take-all market, and Bitcoin won. They got through the SegWit block size wars of 2017, and now in 2021, I think we're going to see Bitcoin's dominance versus altcoins continue to rise sharply, and but you know, the folks that are attached to these other projects, of course, don't want to. A lot of them are reluctant to see the writing on the wall. They don't want to go in that direction. They don't want to accept the reality of the situation. But Bitcoin doesn't care, so it's just going to continue doing what it's doing, and they can either let go of their losing projects and become more Bitcoin centric or not.
Max, I want to talk about your new project that you've just launched, the Orange Pill podcast. Tell us a little bit about the reason behind launching that podcast and what's the vision there?
Right. So Orange Pill podcast is Max and Stacy really getting back to our roots. You know, we started out doing podcasting even before there was something called podcasting. We started doing this in 2003 when we first met in the south of France. And then we got involved more with formal radio and television. And we did off and on, we would do podcasting. But we decided that it might be a fun project to kind of go back to podcasting. And so we were brainstorming about a theme for it. And we decided that everyone had already been red pilled, right? The blue pill, red pill paradigm. Everyone's already kind of been red pilled, certainly those in the Bitcoin community. So what comes after the red pill? It's the orange pill. So orange pill is Bitcoin. And it's a master kind of umbrella concept, and all of our other projects kind of fit underneath this orange pill podcasting brand, if you will. And it immediately got a really nice traction in the market. So I think it's already in the top 3 podcasts. When you see lists of Bitcoin related podcasts, you'll see Orange Pill Podcast up there in the top 3. And that was within just 4 or 5 weeks of launch. So we think that, we're going to really try to get those numbers as high as we possibly can and take on, mainstream podcasters. And we also have, it's sponsored by the Sun Exchange, which is a South African company. And the Sun Exchange is a brilliant company. Abraham Cambridge is the CEO. And we've been kind of working with them for a number of years. And their business model is to be able to lease solar cells for schools and churches and things like that. And then the solar energy hits the solar cell and it's converted into Bitcoin. And a portion goes to the energy needs of that institution. Maybe it's a school, and the rest comes to the leaser, the investor. And they've been showing 11, 12% annualized rates of return in crypto, right into your Bitcoin wallet. And it's a fantastic model. And they sponsor the Orange Pill podcast. They came aboard immediately. And so it's a great matchup. We love that business.
So you spoke about going back to your roots. I mean, I know that your roots originally were as a banker. I was first introduced to your material through the Four Horsemen by the Renegade Economist, where you were featured as a Wall Street banker who had specific insight into how Wall Street banks and the banking system works. How does a charismatic man who even has a bit of background in comedy get into banking? Tell us about that.
Well, back in 1982, 1983, I was just graduating from New York University in New York. And yeah, I was doing stand-up comedy and was doing radio, WNYU, the college radio station. I was doing a lot of shows there. And I was doing a lot of different jobs to survive, part-time jobs, to work my way through university. And one day I walked into a brokerage firm on Wall Street and just fell in love with this whole environment of Wall Street. And I never really knew anything about it. But within just a couple of hours, I was smitten. I just was like, this is the most awesome thing ever. And at that time, Wall Street had been through a 16-year bear market. Nobody really thought of Wall Street as an opportunity or as a good place to work. A lot of brokers at that time had night jobs as school teachers and taxi drivers just to make ends meet. It was tough to make a living on Wall Street at that time, believe it or not. But in 1982, the summer of 82, was actually the entire market after 16 years of bearishness flipped. And we started this bull market that we're still on today. So suddenly I'm a broker on Wall Street at the beginning of the biggest bull market ever. And so that for the next 8 years, I was working on Wall Street as a broker and, just kind of carried by that wave of money. I mean, the amount of money that showed up is just phenomenal. And the profits and the revenues. And I mean, it's just an incredible amount of money. So I got swept up by a tsunami of money, the second I walked into that office and rode that wave really hard for 8 years.
And then you went back into journalism. How did that transition happen? That's quite a big jump.
Well, in 1990, I've always had this philosophy of life, basically, just that the universe ultimately decides, and just let the universe decide, and to not to try to overthink it too much and just go with the flow. So in 1990, I found myself in Paris, and for a week, and I fell in love with Paris so deeply. And I guess another theme is that I'm very driven by my emotions in a lot of ways. So I just fell in love with Paris very, very deeply. And 1 week vacation turned into 2 weeks. And then before I knew it, I was calling up my associate at the office in Wall Street, and I sold him my entire business on the phone. And I said, I'm not coming back. There's something here. I must stay in Paris. I love it too much. And I ended up staying in Paris for 5 years. And I was 30 years old at that time. I had made a ton of money. I was sitting in the bank. I had no obligations. I had just a need to explore Paris. And that's what I did. So I just spent my days being kind of a super tourist, just going to walking every street, going to every cafe, every museum, and just learning French, and really a fantastic time. So that was, that took me up to 1995, 1996 in that period. Then a friend of mine from NYU that I mentioned, Alec Baldwin, he was visiting with his wife, Kim Basinger. She was there to make a film. And so we were hanging out in Paris for 3 weeks. And I told him about a story I had written that could be a good film. He immediately got on the phone to Miramax in Los Angeles and sold that idea to Miramax and I got a check from Miramax, a big check, a very surprisingly large check for what I thought was maybe 5 minutes work, but there it is. And next thing I knew, I'm in Los Angeles. So I'm in Los Angeles in late 95, 96. And the film got kind of never got made. It just kind of like most films in Hollywood never actually get made. They just kind of go around in this hamster wheel of development for years and years and years and never get made. But I did meet up with a friend of mine from Wall Street, and we were sitting around and bored out of our mind because Los Angeles is a very, they call it tinsel town, right? It's very thin, shiny, and stupid and fake. And so we decided to launch the Hollywood Stock Exchange, which became very big as an online gaming platform with a virtual currency, the Hollywood dollar. And I have a patent attached to that virtual currency for the virtual specialist technology, which we subsequently sold in 2001 to Cantor Fitzgerald, a Wall Street bank. But we made the Hollywood Stock Exchange, and we were going to go public in 2000, around the 2000 period by Bear Stearns. They had a deal lined up and an IPO. And at the last minute, Cantor Fitzgerald came in and bought out the whole company instead. So we did a deal with them, a private deal. And so that made me, again, in a position where I had a bag full of money. So I moved back to France. At that time, this time went to the south of France, to the Riviera, the Côte d'Azur, settled into a town called Villefranche-sur-Mer, which is in between Nice and Monaco. And then a couple of years later, in 2003, I met Stacy. She was also in Villefranche at that time. And we just, we met within 2 days. We just were inseparable. And we just started doing a lot of projects together. She had a background in TV and film. And I was, I had this also a background in performance and on Wall Street. And we just brought these things together, and we've been doing these projects ever since. So Orange Pill Podcast is kind of a reflection of all that 17, 18 years now we've been together. And we try to capture it all the stories. We've traveled the world. We've been all over Europe, all over Asia, all over the Middle East, all over Latin America, doing Keiser Report, doing our various shows, talking to people, doing live events, and pushing this idea about Bitcoin as being the path out of the madness, a path out of the fiat money world that is crushing everyone's hopes and dreams globally. And it's a renaissance. This is something Stacy pushes quite hard, is that we're now in a period of a new renaissance, which is powered by Bitcoin.
I want to touch on your mention of your deterministic sort of worldview. Could you elaborate on that? I mean, I'd love to hear a little bit more about your worldview in terms of where you feel decisions should be made. What advice would you give people, especially in this industry, who are trying to escape the fiat system? They're trying to make a name for themselves. Maybe they're starting a new coin, or they're starting a new project. They're starting a new business in crypto assets, digital assets. Should they be trying as hard as they should be, or should they as you mentioned, go with the flow. What advice would you give people based on that kind of worldview?
Yeah, I think that it's a combination of hard work and luck. So there's a lot of karma involved, a lot of serendipity, and a lot of being in the right place at the right time. And you can never really plan for that. You can only put in the work into something that you love, and that's all you can do, and hope for the best. And in terms of in this Bitcoin industry, there is I think a need for anybody who's looking to get into it, that they first have to explore money, the history of money, and what is money. So most people look at Bitcoin in terms of technology, and they enter it through the technology angle. And so they're not necessarily completely aware of how it relates to money and the history of money. And that leaves them a little bit off target in terms of understanding how this all thing fits completely. Some people come to it from finance, purely from finance, and as a financial asset, and they're either bankers or brokers, et cetera. But again, a lot of people in banking and brokerage don't really know money so much. They live in a world of fiat money, and there might be financial engineers, and they're financially engineered projects using fiat money, but very few actually know much about money and the history of money and why gold is money and what is money, et cetera. So again, that group would need to understand more about money. The great book by Safety Namus, which is called The Bitcoin Standard. He really spends 3/4 of the book talking about the history of money. And then the last quarter is about Bitcoin. And that's about the right ratio. You need to put in some serious work into what is money and the history of money. And then really you start to understand why Bitcoin is as great as it is.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors.
Support for this podcast comes from Paxful. At Paxful, we believe Bitcoin is more than just a digital currency. It's a new way of life that will completely disrupt the global financial system. Paxful is a people-powered marketplace that allows for money transfers with anyone, anywhere, at any time. Using over 300 different payment methods, you can buy and sell Bitcoin using bank transfers, cash, and even gift cards. With borderless transactions, the ability to start a business, along with the numerous opportunities for social good, Paxful is set to change the world. Create an account today to get your free Bitcoin wallet and begin trading right away. Paxful, you'll never look at your money the same way again.
Okay, and we're back with Max. What about your worldview, Max? Tell us about some of the great philosophers, thinkers that have shaped your worldview that really you're inspired by.
Well, I'm always interested in people like Alan Watts and Carl Jung. So Alan Watts is very much into the kind of the Zen aspect of things, and he wrote a book, The Taboo Against Knowing Who You Yourself. I read that as a teenager and thought, this is a very interesting way to view things. I love the Carl Jung, and really this idea of the world is really connected at some subconscious or unconscious level in a way that where our experiences are tied to kind of an uber story, a universal story, the story of who we are. That is playing out all continuously. Hero with 1,000 Faces, a book about this very idea of heroes coming and going and kind of reliving the same story of the hero. So there's a lot of things that are incredibly obvious that people just refuse to look at. And there's a lot of things that are incredibly opaque that people think they know about. And you put those two together, you end up with a population that's mostly existentially confused, frustrated, in a lot of pain, and with no clarity. So to get through all that, one easy way is with Bitcoin, because Bitcoin actually, if you understand why Bitcoin is money and why money is a connective tissue from the first humans that walked out of Africa to humans today in 2021, you have some ability to pause and take a breath and say, okay, I do have the ability to achieve a philosophical understanding of who I am and who we are and what's going on. And with that, you have the wherewithal and the space and the time to go anywhere you want to go. Anyone can do anything they want to do. There's plenty of time. But you need to breathe properly, and you need to have one overriding philosophical truth that you abide by to make that all happen.
What is your overriding philosophical truth?
That hard money promotes peace and trade and love.
Wow.
It all goes back to hard money.
Wow.
So as long as we have an economy based on hard money, we're going to have an economy and a society that moves toward peace and away from war. And love changes things, whereas hatred keeps things the way they are. Hatred is a force for immobility, fear, stasis, rot, whereas love is the force of movement, understanding, forgiveness, peacefulness, and trade. Trade is essentially a peaceful act. People want to trade with each other. People want to talk to each other. Money is a form of communication. Prices are a form of communication that people use to trade and to move and to be free. So that freedom to move at will, it requires that you at least have one universal language, and that would be the universal language of trading, and that means you need hard money. So gold was that hard money for thousands of years. And now in the digital age, we have Bitcoin that is better than gold in many ways, and can give people the freedom that they are instinctively yearning for.
Do you believe that there will come a time in the future where society will be built on hard money? I mean, it does look like, you look at China rising as a world power, introducing their central bank digital currency, the European Union exploring their own central bank digital currency. Will there ever come a time in the perhaps distant future where we are basing our economies on sound money? Do you think it's possible?
Well, a central bank digital currency is just a substitute for central bank fiat money. That doesn't compete with Bitcoin. So it's just garbage. It's centralized, it's hackable, it's censorable, it's not secure. So it's garbage, just like any fiat money is garbage. So it doesn't compete with Bitcoin. Do I see a time when a Bitcoin standard emerges and you have a global community that is operating on a Bitcoin standard? I think that's happening right now. And not necessarily because it's right and good, but from desperation. People are getting so destroyed by the fiat money world that they are looking for substitutes out of necessity. And gold is not very practical, but Bitcoin is. And so the adoption curve of Bitcoin is driven more by the collapse of fiat money than by folks deciding, oh, this is a cool thing, I'm going to get into it. Look at, for example, Nigeria. Nigeria is a country that has been cut off from the global banking system. The KYC and AML requirements are making almost censorship imposing on that population of 200 million people. They can't really do business globally because banks put up these gates, they're gatekeepers. And so Nigeria has turned to Bitcoin. So what's been the result? Well, 30% of Nigeria is now using Bitcoin, and they use it as a unit of account. Nigeria could become the dominant Bitcoin country in the world. And within the next 20 or 30 years, it'll be the second most populated country in the world. And it's got an incredibly young population. So Nigeria could be the capital of Bitcoin within 5, 6, 7 years. And it could be the second most populated country in the world. And they use a Bitcoin as a Bitcoin standard, and people are free to trade. They leapfrogged the infrastructure of the legacy banking system. And they are now 21st century. The pendulum swing away from America as being the world reserve currency with the dollar and the cultural center of the universe, as it has been post World War II, could swing to Nigeria. Using Bitcoin via Bitcoin. And Nigeria already has an incredible culture. Bollywood is the equivalent of Hollywood, and they put out hundreds of films. It's a huge industry over there. The music industry is huge. They got a great culture. So then if it's a Bitcoin standard, huge population, and Nigeria could be the new America, could be the new go-to country for the world.
That's a very different view to a lot of people taking. They're looking at China. Everyone's looking at China. Do you think even Nigeria could surpass China in terms of economic prowess?
Definitely. The problem with China is that it's just too centralized, right? It's a centralized control, and they like the idea of digital currencies because it gives the central Politburo and central authority greater autonomy and greater autocracy. But that goes against the ethos of Bitcoin, and it's counterproductive, and it's clinging to the legacy system. So I don't really see China being a big Bitcoin player going forward. The countries on top now, I think, are all going to be on the bottom. So the US and China are going to go from being in the top 2 or 3 countries to being in the bottom. Japan also. So you're going to have countries now that are considered on the bottom are going to be on the top. So you've got Nigeria, Venezuela, Iran. Iran could be a Bitcoin powerhouse. You've got Kazakhstan just put $700 million into Bitcoin mining. Okay, so Kazakhstan could be immediately in the top 10 or 15 countries in the next 24 months. Bitcoin goes from 10, 11,000 to 100, 200, 300,000. Suddenly Iran and Kazakhstan are the richest countries in the world. And he who has the wealth makes the rules, right? That's the law. The law, we've been with that for quite some time. So I think there's going to be a huge new awakening around the world, in the countries that have been the victim of the US dollar and fiat money will be the victor. And those who are legacy players who are sitting on their laurels and I watched that presidential debate this week here in America, and what I saw were 2 people who were drowning and fighting over the last mango, in a raft somewhere in the middle of nowhere. The country is shot to hell. I gotta be frank with you. I don't think the U.S. has got the what it takes to continue much longer in the face of a Bitcoin empowered country that has hard money and a young, vibrant population of entrepreneurs. The Nigerian population is incredibly entrepreneurial. They're not waiting around for universal basic income. They're like, let's create business, let's do trade, let's use Bitcoin, and it's happening. And that's what we know. Nature would favor that over a static, lazy kind of legacy bum like the U.S., China.
You are currently based in the US. When we last spoke to Stacy, we found out that you are staying in the US now. Do you have any plans? I mean, for us here in South Africa, a lot of South Africans look at the economy and get quite frankly frightened, and they think, well, we're going to try and exit to Australia, Europe, wherever the case is. You are speaking very pessimistically of the future of America. Do you have thoughts of, man, maybe we should get out of here? Is the outlook on the likes of the USA that pessimistic?
Well, in the case of Max and Stacy, we've always been very mobile for our entire relationship, almost 20 years now. So we've lived in countries all over the world, and we've traveled all over the world. And so if we wanted to leave where we are now, we could literally be out of here and on a plane heading anywhere within 24 hours. That's how we're set up. It's incredibly agile. So for us, the mandate is agility. And we are looking at the situation every day to see what's happening. There are countries that I think are quite favorable to and would be very welcoming for people like us. And we keep contact with them, and we keep doors open and relationships fresh. And we're able to hit the eject button at any moment. I don't have any particular allegiance to any one country, except that country that's going to respect my Bitcoin. That's the country that gets my respect.
I want to come back to your current work at the moment. I mean, obviously, we've spoken about Orange Pill podcast. You're still on Russia Today with the Keiser Report, which is one of your most successful shows. I mean, you had such a great history on BBC and Al Jazeera. Keiser Report now your longest running show, from my understanding. Do you foresee a sort of emergence, or rather an amalgamation of the work that you're doing on Orange Pill with your Keiser Report material?
Well, like I was saying earlier, the Orange Pill podcast, we can do anytime, any day, and it's easy to do. And we control the distribution, the content, and it taps into our, almost 2 decades of creating content and our global journey that we've been on. And so, and it's almost absolutely costless to produce. Doesn't incur cost really to produce this content, the Orange Pill podcast, really. So it's just an easy way to keep the conversation and the dialogue and the travel going. During this whole 18 year period, we have done television, radio, and live shows in different countries, different distributors, different producers, and those relationships come and go. And it's not really in our control, because that's just the nature of the global media distribution industry. That I don't own a huge network. I don't own Comcast. I don't own MTV or HBO. I mean, I don't own a huge distribution content amalgamation like that. I'm just on the content production side. And what we've seen, kind of interesting, I guess, is that going back to 2003, when Max and Stacy first started producing content, I say that it's relatively free right now, but back then, actually, it was not that easy. It was difficult to produce content because bandwidth was nowhere where it is today. The cameras that we shoot on at that time were only studio cameras. Could you shoot television programming that could be distributed on network television? Today, we can shoot Keiser Report on 2 iPhones, and that's broadcast quality video. Mm-hmm. That's only been true now for maybe 1 year. So that's incredibly freeing. I think that's really more the answer to your question, is that during the time that we've been producing content, the technology has advanced so much in terms of bandwidth, in terms of video quality, processing speed, and all the things that make up the technological environment. All that stuff's improved so radically that the individual podcaster and TV producer now is really competing head to head with any major network. So that the networks used to have, when we were living in Paris, for example, we would interview a guest in another country and they'd book satellite time. And the satellite time was like $3,000 for 15 minutes. You'd book a satellite guest. Today, on Zoom or Skype, it costs nothing, right? So, and you're getting the same guest. So all those intermediaries that were doing all that kind of network distribution and broadcasting model and all those, the equipment and the infrastructure of that, the cost has gone down to near zero. So those folks are really the ones who are experiencing a paradigm shift in their model and how the business is done. But for us on the content production side, it's been exactly the same. We do the exact same style content now for 18 years. The only thing that's changed is that the distribution has morphed from being network centric to being social media centric and individually generated, where the costs are within anyone's reach. Anybody can do a show. And we have the rise of, the TikTok star and the YouTube star. These are people with almost no money, but talent, who are now making millions on TikTok or other social media platforms. So the whole paradigm's been reversed. When I was in Los Angeles, you still had the talent agencies. They were the gatekeepers to talent. People became stars, if they were brought into the CAA and William Morris and the talent agencies, then working with the distributors, the studios, and that was the Hollywood machine, and it's all very protected. But now you've got people anywhere in the world, it's a bunch of pallbearers in Nigeria carrying a coffin down the street suddenly get a meme that's seen by billions, and it's generating income, and they open up a studio, right? There's no Hollywood, there's no agent, there's no distribution. All those people being wiped out because the internet, because of the frictionless quality of this new paradigm. It means that ideas that are inherently frictionless can realize their full potential in real time. So ideas can just burst out at the seam. This is why we see memes that are affecting the way outcomes. Back in 2016, during the last presidential election, the meme of Pepe the Frog, which came out of the meme factory that is 4chan at that time, had a material impact on that outcome of that election because Hillary Clinton decided to really buy into this meme and just then bought into the narrative that was being packaged by hackers on 4chan, even though it made no sense, it had no relation to anything, but she bought into it and immediately lost credibility from anyone who was 30 years or under who understand the power of memes. They said, oh, wait a minute, this woman is completely out of touch with what's happening in the real economy. So that's what's changed. That's the different part of it. Orange Pill Podcast is just another chapter in the vector of the Max and Stacy content that's always been going toward universality and frictionless ubiquity at no cost, with the simple truth that hard money, which we started out gold and silver and then started with Bitcoin in 2011 when it was $1, is the path toward sanity. The sanity. What you do with your sanity is up to you. We're not saying, all we promise is that we can help you become sane. That's it. What you do after that is up to you. We don't have any other message than that.
It reminds me a lot of an Alan Watts lecture that I saw. I think he spoke it in the 60s, where he actually predicted technology would bring content into our homes to the point where we couldn't even differentiate reality any longer. What you're talking about here is this going back to your ability to just produce content at will and distribute it at will. Are you implying that perhaps, your presence on mainstream media like Russia Today is coming to an end?
No, I wouldn't say that because we have no reason not to continue to ship content to RT for them to distribute. All right. So we're independent producers. We send them the content and they play the content. And we have a co-producer in the mix, who we work with, the Associated Press in the United States. It's the longest news gathering organization, the most historic news gathering organization in America. They covered Custer's last stand, wow, during the mid 1800s. So the Associated Press is actually the producer of the Keiser Report.
Okay.
And they have relationships with foreign and global distributors. So we never actually talk to RT. I've talked to them maybe once a year. They wish me Merry Christmas. And I tell them, thank you very much. Have a nice year. And that's pretty much the only contact we have. So the Associated Press, what the advantage we have with them is that they've got studios all over the world. If we go to Beirut, we go to Cairo, we go to Germany, France, Bangkok, the Associated Press has a television studio. We were just in their television studios in Brazil. And we went, you just walk in, there's cameras are set up. They've got a great background shot. The cameramen are standing there ready to go. They already know the format of the show, and we're in and out of there. We can shoot 2 or 3 shows in less than an hour, right? So that's the beauty of the Associated Press, because they've got this global system of studios, and we do use their studios. And they've got facilitation capabilities. They also can be helpful in booking guests for us. They have great relationships all over the world. So, they're a fine organization. But what I think the bigger question is, and probably what we should be talking about, is that Associated Press makes their bread and butter by taking their huge cameras to places and shooting B-roll and selling that B-roll to news organizations around the world. But if everyone with their camera phone is already getting all that B-roll and selling it to news organizations for pennies on the dollar, who needs the Associated Press? I mean, their business model is being intermediated or disintermediated. So I think that's the bigger question. At what point does the Associated Press business model become overridden by technology? That's the question. And then if that were the case, then that would be something for us to consider. But at the moment, as long as they are still operating around the world and can still hook us up with cameramen, soundmen, and studio facilities in almost any city in the world, it takes a load off our plate. We just show up, sit down, and be charming.
You talk about people coming into Bitcoin and needing to understand, before coming through the gateway of tech, understand money. There's a lot of independent media outlets now. I mean, I spoke earlier of the Renegade Economist. There's a number of others. I want to ask you, where would you send people today to understand sound money and get a holistic view of what is really going on in the world, as opposed to the sort of mainstream narrative that, modern monetary policy is actually okay? What sources would you send people to get a good framework of understanding the need for sound money?
Right. Well, there's not much of it, right? Because in all the major economies, in the United Kingdom, the United States, Western Europe, everywhere else, they are really wed to fiat money, and they take an adversarial position against hard money. We've been saying for 11 years that JP Morgan's been involved in a manipulation of both the precious metals markets and the treasury bond markets. And we've been saying this for years, and we've shown proof. We've shown documents. We've done interviews with experts. And the response from the mainstream media was to ignore that fact, to ignore that truth. Now, just in the last couple of weeks, they had to pay almost $1 billion fine for precious metal manipulation and treasury bond manipulation. Their business model of JP Morgan is they keep roughly 60 to 65% of every dollar they steal. That's their model. The government forces them to give back 30, 35, 40% of the money they steal. And that's their model. So I thought it was very interesting. For example, someone who worked for the Donald Trump campaign in 2016 was just been accused of allegedly stealing $40 million. So using Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan's ratio of justice, standard of justice, he should be allowed to keep 30 million of that 40 million he just stole. That should be the penalty. He has to give back 25% of the money he just stole. If the justice system is going to be equally applied across the society, then that should be the outcome. But of course, that's not the outcome. Now, my point being that the mainstream media, not only are they not talking about what's important, and that is hard money, but they're actively working in the service of what is pernicious, ugly, undermining, anti-democratic, and soul-crushing, and that would be fiat money. So they are really in league with the devil, which is not nice. I guess it's a roundabout answer, but it comes back to a theme I think we've been saying here during this interview, is that before embarking on this voyage of understanding hard money, you have to get right with yourself. Like, you have to examine yourself. Like, are you ready to accept the message of hard money? Because most people they're comfortable in a world where Jamie Dimon can steal at will with no consequences. They feel comfortable in a world of, cheap food and fake food, and, obesity is rampant, right? People don't mind. The people are comfortable in a world of just extremely low standards. So you have to ask yourself, do you want to first have a different standard in your own life first. I mean, you have to ask yourself that question, because you can't just take the message of hard money and try to weld it onto a personality built on Twinkies and fiat money. That's not going to work. That's not going to join. It's not going to happen. You've got to be ready for it. You've got to be prepared for it first. So examine, in your life, in what ways can you shed these horrible habits that have been brainwashed into your mind about how you take care of yourself and your family and your emotional life first. I mean, that's step number one. So how do you do that? Well, that's like an individual voyage. Also, it's hard to, nobody's going to go down the path the same way. But I think the beginning of it is just to ask those questions, and then and have a conversation with yourself, and see what you decide to do with yourself. That's the first question you need to ask yourself. Who do you really want to be? That's your first question. And then take it from there, because, you may be there may be somebody inside of you, a hostile person that doesn't want you to understand Bitcoin or hard money or to have a loving relationship. And so that's a problem right there. You need to take care of that immediately.
Wow. Right. I mean, I did not expect that answer to go down that extremely philosophical and psychological rabbit hole. So that was very impressive indeed. I think so. There's a lot of material here for the next Orange Pill podcast. Max,
right? The Orange Pill podcast. That's what we try to get into. It's like a meditation. Where people are like joining spirits and meditating on these themes. And again, all we promise is that we can help you achieve some sanity. That's it. That's the only thing that we aspire to do.
And I love the link between understanding hard money and actually understanding yourself. Where do you fit into this greater system, this economic system? Max, we are going to bring it in for a close here. We're running out of time, but I want to ask you this. We featured a story here on Global Crypto a couple of months ago where you had tweeted about Greta Thunberg. And I just want to touch on where hard money often goes. A lot of people in the anti-fiat subculture are very independent. They want to see independent and libertarian political structure. And then, people, young activists like a Greta Thunberg, for instance, who are inspirationally trying to bring about change in their way. But obviously that implies, hey, we need to tax a lot of governments. We need to tax a lot of companies. And the libertarians are against that kind of taxation. Where do you stand on regulation to at least try and prevent these monopolies from getting away from us?
Well, in the case of Greta, for me, she's like a Joan of Arc character, a very young woman, just barely out of girlhood, really, young woman who has channeled a deep emotional attachment and respect for planet Earth, for Gaia, for Mother Earth, and is expressing those views to power, going to the head of the UN and going to the head of these organizations and telling them essentially, hey, you folks who run these establishments, go fuck yourself, right? And she says that forcefully. And she says it in a way that makes adults in the room, their assholes pucker. Like, you know what? Maybe we are guilty, shameless, marauders and genocidal maniacs. Maybe we are. She gets through to them in a very spiritual Joan of Arc-like way. So I think as an individual, it's a unique individual who is commanding powers that are remarkable. And so that message, that's the first and foremost message. And the idea that the human civilization, the ability of planet Earth, the carrying capacity for planet Earth for 7, 8, 9 billion humans consuming at the current rate, has gone past sustainable, right? We went past sustainable probably 40 years ago, 50 years ago. So we're living on borrowed time. As humans need oxygen, humans need arable land, humans need water, and all these things are being turned off. And so we'll be aliens on our own planet because we won't have any air to breathe or food to eat. So that is an existential crisis that is brought on by essentially, and I guess this is getting into the libertarian question. Libertarians and anarcho-capitalists believe in the sanctity of the market, that the market knows all, and that prices are their kind of religion. But we know, and this what we're just talking about, Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan, that prices are manipulated. There's virtually no market in the world that has true price discovery, which would be true reflection of supply and demand. Every single price you see in every single market in the world is being manipulated to some degree. Why? Because it's highly influenced by those printing the fiat money. If you print the fiat money, and this is what spoofing, which is what JP Morgan was just accused of, does. They print billions of dollars and then they submit fake orders to move the market through fake price discovery. And then they take advantage of those fake prices to line their own pockets and to keep the price of gold down to support their fiat money Ponzi scheme. That's what they do. And it's enabled in that way. And so prices do not reflect the reality. So anarcho-capitalists and libertarians, their point is moot because there is no true market anywhere in the world. If we had the most perfect market in the world would be something like photosynthesis, where you see, essentially plants there's a perfect market between carbon and oxygen happening during the process of photosynthesis. That's one of the most perfect exchanges or markets and price discovery mechanisms in the world is on a green leaf. If every stock, bond, currency, commodity was as robust as the market price discovery of photosynthesis, we wouldn't be having this conversation, because a company like Exxon, which makes a ton of money by not including onto its balance sheet the externalities of the cost of the genocide that they're perpetrating and the murder that they are responsible for. It's off balance sheet. If the risks of a major oil company's risks were put back on the balance sheet and we had true price discovery, Exxon price, instead of collapsing this year because oil markets are disintegrating, it would have collapsed 30 years ago. And Greta Thunberg would be, playing hopscotch somewhere, in Switzerland and having a normal childhood. But the gravity and the enormity of the market manipulation fueled by the kleptocrats, plutocrats, and psychopaths like Jamie Dimon and JP Morgan have brought us to this moment in time. And the libertarian and narco-capitalist arguments do not hold water. They're easily disproved and easily debunked. And finally, let me say this: those who follow anarcho-capitalism and libertarianism to the point where they think of markets as a religion, you have to really understand that's the exact same model of thinking of a terrorist. And that's why I call these folks market terrorists. Jamie Dimon, for example, he does things that you'd expect a terrorist to do. A theocratic terrorist might look at the Quran, for example, and completely misread the Quran and read something that says one thing and interpret it as to justify an act of violence. Jamie Dimon will read Adam Smith when this is one of the primary texts of the market fundamentalist. And he'll read Adam Smith and he'll read something in there, but he won't look at the major other parts of the Adam Smith canon of work, which is the theory of moral sentiments, which is all about why you need to regulate markets. He never mentions that part. He only looks at a very small fragment of the text. And he'll say, this is the reason I need to steal all this money from the Americans. This is the reason I need to manipulate these markets. This is the reason I need to exercise my religious belief in the sanctity of the markets as I invented them and I take advantage of them. And I'm willing to kill myself and others. Another terrorist ID point. He's willing to kill himself and others. He misreads his basic texts. He is also, he goes to special schools where they learn the market fundamentalisms like Harvard, Yale, Princeton. This is like the madrasa of the market fundamentalists in America. And they end up like a Ben Bernanke, who goes to the Federal Reserve Bank as his chairman. He manipulates interest rates down to the point where it creates a global existential ecological crisis, and then works for Citadel, a hedge fund, that makes billions of dollars to trade on inside information. All documented, all completely true. But he'll go on CNBC and he'll say, it's okay because I'm a market fundamentalist. And in America, we're all financial terrorists. And that's our religion. And Americans go, yeah, give me more. Okay. So Bitcoin community is saying, like Greta Thunberg, we have a common theme. Go fuck yourself. You, your banks, your central banks, your fake market price discovery, it's all got to be torched, burned to shit. Go away. You're done.
Max, we are out of time, so we're going to leave you. But before we go, we do this for every episode. We ask the previous guest to ask a question of our next guest. So considering you're the first guest of this season, unfortunately, we don't have a question for you, but we'd like you to ask a question to the CTO of Blockstream, Samson Mao. Samson Mao, of course, features on the Magical Crypto podcast with Fluffy Pony and Whale Panda and others. So he's our next guest. What question would you ask Samson Mao?
I can ask Samson that in the new world of virtual reality, is there still room for self-identity, or will all identities be merged into one super identity?
Beautifully philosophical question. I hope he answers it as philosophically as you have. Max,
right, well, I'm an investor in one of his companies, so.
Well, there we go. Any other final thoughts that you'd like to give us before we say goodbye?
Hodl, hodl. That's it.
That's all it comes down to. Well,
That's it. Just hodl and be good.
Well, Max Keiser, the host of Keiser Report, the host of the Orange Pill podcast, and most importantly, husband of Stacy Herbert. Thank you so much. It's been a real privilege to have you on.
Yeah, I'm the co-host of Orange Pill and the co-host of Keiser Report.
Indeed. Our apologies. Thanks so much for joining us, Max.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And it's gone.
What?
It's gone. It's all gone.
Not socialism.
All right, let's not panic.
And it's gone.
I'll make the money back by selling one of my livers. I can get by with one.
Government should be a partner. Partner.
I don't need anybody's money. It's nice. I'm really rich.
And it's gone. Gone.